Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Athlete Podcast with me, James Roberts, transformational coach, two-time Paralympian, and TEDx speaker. I have another awesome episode for you today, so let's get straight into it. This is the Mindset Athlete Podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. And on today's show, I've got Brian Bell. Brian lost his leg at the age of 10 due to a train accident. After finishing his rehabilitation, he wanted to get back to playing his favorite sports, basketball and football. He played middle school football on his prosthetic until it became too strenuous. So his mother discovered the Lakeshore Foundation, a U.S. Olympic and Paralympic training site in Birmingham, Alabama, where he fell in love with the sport of wheelchair basketball after attending sport camps for children with disabilities at the age of 12. Brian has gone on to represent Team USA at 2 Paralympics, Rio bringing home the gold, and then again most recently in Tokyo 2020 as of last year, bringing home a second gold medal, and is also a 2-time silver medalist at the World Champs. So welcome onto the show, Brian.
Thank you for having me, James. Appreciate it.
The pleasure is all mine. So if we go back to the very beginning, what was some of the adversity that you faced mentally, having lost the leg at such a young age?
It's the kind of general and standard things you go with. After it happens, you wake up in the hospital, kind of not really realizing what happened, kind of thinking that it's all was a dream. The things that you kind of remember happening. But then you realize that, it wasn't a dream. It happened. You lost your leg. In that moment or in that short period, you kind of, think about all the things that you might not be able to have the chance to do because you lost your leg. Maybe you won't be able to walk again. You think about all that kind of negative things right after you realize that this traumatic accident happened. But I was fortunate enough when I was in the hospital, having the people there at the Children's Hospital, my mom, my friends visiting me, a lot of people supporting me, making sure that my life isn't over just because I lost my leg. And there's plenty of opportunities to kind of get back up, walk, even run, and do even activities on a prosthetic if I put the work into it. So it's kind of my kind of mindset after it all happened was to try to get back to more of a normalcy of a kid, growing up and going back to school, hanging out with friends, doing all the other kind of normal things.
Do you feel a sense of fortunate and a little bit humbling to be, obviously, where you were brought up, to have the Lakeshore Foundation to be on your doorstep?
Oh, yeah, I was very fortunate, especially kind of growing up and playing against other athletes or hearing stories of other athletes having to travel, an hour, 2 hours, even to another state to kind of play with a team because there wasn't any teams in their, in the area or in the neighborhood. So I was very fortunate to be able to have a location like that, literally right in my backyard, 15-minute drive away. So I was definitely very fortunate. It's an awesome facility. Has plenty of stuff to do, swimming pools, weight rooms, 3 or 4 courts, pretty much anything you needed to do in terms of, trying to be an athlete, they pretty much had it. And I was able to have that access to that pretty much from middle school to on. So.
But having the setback of not being able to play football after middle school, was it love at first sight for you, that you fell in love with basketball then, or fell in love with a different kind of basketball, but obviously wheelchair basketball?
Like you mentioned before, basketball and football growing up were kind of my go-to sports, especially football. Being in the South, football was kind of a big part of growing up, especially if you're a big Alabama fan. They're kind of, pretty much our professional team, even though they're a collegiate team. That's how much kind of the fandom is down there. But I would say that it was kind of an easy transition just because I already had that strong love for basketball already. And I still did a lot of kind of able-bodied basketball even after starting wheelchair basketball. I just love basketball in general, and I just love the sport. So it was kind of an easy transition from not playing football standing up to being in the chair and playing basketball sitting down.
Gotcha. So I'm going to ask you a very difficult question now, Brian.
Okay.
If we fast forward to your collegiate days, why do you pick the University of Illinois over obviously where you live of a pretty prestigious program as well in the University of Alabama's adaptive program? Was that a difficult decision for you to make?
It was very difficult. Like I said, I was a big Alabama fan growing up. So it was difficult. Even my high school coach was actually the coach of the collegiate team at the time too. So even just to say no to him was even more so of a struggle. But I weighed a lot of pros and cons. I knew a lot of guys coming out of the high school program that I played against that were going to U of I. I didn't want to kind of be the main focal point at Alabama because there was kind of a new program. Kind of wanted to go to a more of an established program. And U of I was kind of basically the place where it all originated from. So there's a lot of history there. The coach at the time was also the Canadian men's wheelchair basketball coach who's won countless gold medals with the Canadian men's team. So I felt like it was a good kind of next step to kind of improve my game to be able to make a USA national team in the future, to kind of step my game up to another elite level, so I can be able to play a sport at a high level.
Do you think the change in senior and change of environment helps as well? Because obviously you being Alabama native, that would be in your comfort zone. So you think changing and uprooting thousands of miles away is something that maybe subconsciously you're not aware of, but it will obviously challenge you in so many different ways?
Oh, it was definitely challenging. That's definitely after my freshman year, after realizing, all the things I have to kind of juggle: basketball, school, extracurricular activities away from those two things with friends, hanging out, and such. Even trying to get a job and working and doing all that type of stuff is definitely a big juggling act. And being so far away, you don't really have, that ready support to help you out whenever you need a little bit of help or support. But I was able to kind of lean on the friends there. I was able to lean on the kind of the support of the basketball community and the organization there, to kind of help me through it. I definitely struggled, of course, at times. Going to a big university, coming, from such a smaller area, that was definitely a big adjustment. I definitely had made a lot of mistakes early on. Not maybe looking for a job right away, and just kind of more relying on scholarship money to kind of get me through, and then not lasting as long, and then all types of different, hurdles. But, you have to get to go through those things to kind of learn from them. So down the road, you can know about them, you can improve upon like your decision making about certain things. So looking back, I would not say I want to go through all that again, but it was definitely needed to go through all that, just so I know, and it was more prepared for down the road.
Did that give you or set you on the path to playing obviously overseas, which has pretty much been your professional career to date? Because obviously you moved to Italy pretty much coming straight out of college, having to have to then learn another language as well as that. How daunting was that?
It was definitely challenging. The best way I looked at it was trying to find an easier transition. I guess it would be the best kind of word to say for that. And that's by finding clubs that maybe people I know have gone to. Like two of my collegiate teammates went to the club in Italy that I went to before I went there. So they're familiar with them. I asked them a ton of questions. I knew a lot of the guys from playing against them internationally, like Ian Sagar from GB team, that was there. So I asked him a few questions about how the club was, and he spoke English as well. So it's kind of it wasn't as bad as I thought. It wasn't like I'm going to a complete Italian team. They only spoke Italian. They only did this. So it was kind of an easier transition than I thought it would be. It was definitely difficult at times because in Italy they don't speak as readily English as you think they would. But it was definitely good because it helped me kind of learn the language a little bit more because I had to while I was there. So yeah, for the most part, I would say it was kind of a easier transition than most.
Would you say that's some of the novelties of wheelchair basketball? Because they're not in the big, for majority, not in these big cities. So you're talking of the outskirts of Milan. Very much people are familiar of it be from a touristic point of view. But you're talking of from a visitor perspective, obviously it's an amazing place to live, living on the lakes and things like that. But be it they're less likely to be as fluent or as a native speaker as you and I are conversing. And you mentioned Ian. I've listened to some of his interviews. You would find it hard to believe that he's not an Italian speaker just because he's been there so long. You're thinking, well, even how he speaks in English has a bit of an Italian accent, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So what was in the back of your mind to transition? Because pretty much you'd won it all in Italy. Was to move to Landil a different challenge then?
Yeah, it definitely was. Especially because Landil is kind of such a historic club, and then on top of that, Turk it's always been kind of their close rivals, so they were up and coming. And I knew some of my USA guys were also looking to go to Germany, so I feel like it would be a very competitive step forward in my career is to go to a different spot to see if I can compete against even more competition to improve my game, to maybe accomplish a few more of my goals, and yeah, for the most part, I thought it was a great decision. It still has been a great decision so far.
And most people, when I read your intro, Brian, they would probably say he's pretty much won everything at international level. He's won everything at club level. What motivates you day in, day out then?
I think it's just the people around me. If I'm on a team, I'm going to give it my 100% no matter what. And that's the thing, like I'm gonna do anything and everything that's needed for my team to potentially get the win. If it's me, being defense the whole way or diving in for other people so they can get more looks, that type of thing. Just for the most part, I like to try to make sure everyone's involved because the way I was taught up playing basketball is that, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So like if, you have like a class 1 or someone else who's maybe not as well of a shooter, class 2, 3, it's not performing well. So being able to put them in certain roles to maximize the effectiveness of the whole team in general, it was kind of my forte and my plan. So what I like to do is just trying to maximize the team in general, even if I'm not scoring, 20, 30, 40 points. As long as I'm playing well defensively, making sure I'm talking to everyone and making sure everyone's roles are covered during the field of play, we should ultimately get the win in the end. So
I'm going to be harsh on you now.
No worries.
How can you have a weakest link in that team? Because most of those individuals, international caliber players, do you look at it more from a game by game perspective of obviously everybody can't shoot the lights out every single day, every single night? Do you look at it more of what can I bring specifically to give something more to the team, or obviously negates obviously the opposition?
I know going into it, I would say I'll go back before I made a national team. The biggest kind of feedback they told me is that I'm too small. I was like, well, yeah, I know that. I can't really do anything about that. So my thing is that, well, then if I'm too small, then I'm just going to be faster than everyone. So they can't get to the spots that they can shoot over me from. So that's kind of like my mindset after I missed the chance of making the London team was like, I'm just going to maximize on doing the small little things that I can control to the best of my ability, and then being able to translate over to a team aspect. So I focus really, really heavy on defense, being able to guard those, 4-4-5s that are really, really big, love going inside, love shooting over, the other guys. So being able to maximize my defense for the team. Because ultimately, if you have a good defensive team, you should ultimately win the basketball game. So that was kind of my driving force. And then after that, I focused more on offensive aspect of things. Because if the team needed me to be more offensively minded, then I'd be able to do it when they needed me to do it. So
I won't call you small at 6'1".
it's still pretty small compared to some of the other guys.
Do you carry most of your height in your legs then? And is that the issue because your torso is not as long as say
yeah, exactly. Like I don't have as long as the torso as some other guys. Maybe like Rodney Hawkins from Columbia or like a Pat Anderson from Canada. Like I just don't have a long torso.
I think that's the misconception I had when I transitioned after London to play obviously domestic wheelchair basketball. People assume, James, you're going to be 6. I'm just shorter than you are, but there's that misconception that you're tall. Yeah, but I carry like you. I'm my height is not useful in that sport because it's in my legs. It would be all right if I was playing AB basketball.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I can make up with long limbs and that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we fast forward now to your international career, I had to think about who you'd actually lost to. And if I know what the 2018 world champions lost. What's the 14 then?
14 was lost to Australia, I think by like 5 points or something like that. In South Korea.
So that I'm assuming still drives the American teams crazy because you've lost 2 world champs but won 6 the consecutive Paralympics, whereas everybody would want to win the Paralympics. And obviously, I watched all the guys' Instagram over the journey of the Tokyo Games, and obviously you took a picture of the wall after the tournament, and your only blemish is obviously losing to GB in the group stage, which would irritate you guys no matter what. You would have wanted clean sweep.
Yeah.
So for that, from an insider perspective, Brian, how would you paint a picture of Rio 2016 to Tokyo? Because they're completely, obviously, they're 2 separate games. But what's it like having obviously a carnival atmosphere versus virtually having no crowd?
Yeah, it was crazy different. Fortunate enough that being able to play overseas, I was able to kind of experience that a little bit with my club team, not being able to have fans, because London is known to have a very loud and forceful like fan base. So not being able to have them there at games, like you notice it like very easily. So it was easier, at least transition for me once we got to Tokyo, knowing that it won't be fans. But then some of the other guys, they play domestically in the US, and they normally don't get that many fans as it is anyway. So I don't think it was too big of a deal for us. But definitely a challenge because we love feeding off the crowd, even if it's positive, negative. Definitely because Rio was amazing. Our opening game versus Brazil, like it was so many people there. It was crazy. Like they're just doing rooting against you the whole time. It was just such an amazing atmosphere to be a part in. And definitely very missed. But what can you do with the circumstances? And we just kind of rolled with what was going on, and we were still able to get the job done.
So that having that disappointment, but having the kind of euphoric meteoric rise of the Japanese team, do you think that was obviously we can't change the present that we're living in? Do you think that would have been another milestone to obviously winning the gold medal in their backyard and obviously having a partisan crowd against you?
Oh yeah, that would have been amazing because I know they would have probably packed it like full of people, and it would have been an amazing atmosphere to be in. It was still even with I know the big thing they did was they had a bunch of the volunteers kind of sit in the crowd because they're already there anyway. So it kind of made it semi-simulate a crowd being there, um, but still not to the same extent. But still having some people kind of hearing them a little bit in the background, cheering against you, cheering for you, type of thing. So it wasn't completely dead, but again, still not the same. But yeah, it would have been amazing if they would have had fans there, been able to have fans there.
So what kind of mindset do you need to put yourself into, irrespective of the Paralympics, even at club level? Because I think even now you I think the most recent game you had no fans either.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get your arousal level, performance level to such an extent to be able to perform? Because some people are going to struggle with not having an external factor to be able to, I don't want to say motivate them, but to be able to spark their energy to be able to differentiate practice and a competitive game.
I know, especially leading into, I would want to say, probably after 2014 at the Worlds, I would say I started really heavily in like meditating and stuff. So being able to kind of get myself in the right mindset that I need to be in on leading and going into games helped tremendously, especially with the focus part, being able to focus on some of the smaller detailed things that you can control. And then I was basically keeping that mindset throughout all the way to now, being able to only control the things or put in the kind of perspective the things that I control, make sure that they're in the right place in the right time, making sure that my energy level is up in terms of, did I have coffee? Did I have, something enough to eat, like nutrition for your body, all those kind of things going into a game. Because if you haven't eaten anything or had any type of, if you needed caffeine, if it's a late game, then you can kind of drawn out a little bit and take your while to kind of ramp up a bit in the game. And also kind of rely heavily on my defense to kind of bump me up a little bit more too. Because I don't know why, but I always get extremely motivated on defense. You can ask anyone that like plays with me or you play against me. I for some reason just get more amped up on defense. I just want to stop the other team or the other person that I'm guarding so much. So I feel like that also helps with me getting my energy level up as well.
Out of curiosity, what position did you play in American football then?
American football, I was on defense. So I played safety and a little bit, and then I played special teams kickoff.
Do you think that might again? Do you think that might be why?
It could be. It could be. It's a good correlation for sure.
Because ultimately, you're as a safety, you're the last line of defense.
Yeah.
You mentioned food, and this is probably it's not a misconception, but be it, obviously I've been in that environment. Food is not hard to come by once you make a Paralympics. So how do you do the opposite to be able to kind of go, it's all well and good 24/7 food being on demand? I think for some people that would be absolute paradise.
Yeah.
But be it from a performance standpoint of it's win it all or pretty much it's been not a great tournament. How do you keep yourself in that kind of frame of mind, as I can't eat everything in sight?
Yeah, you just kind of have like little cheats. So I know in our building that we have a nutritional hub. So they have a bunch of different like quick snacks that you can have. So that way you can eat those quick snacks rather than going to the cafeteria down the hall and like kind of pigging out almost, because food is just so, readily available 24/7. So being able to do that especially like after like a practice session that you don't necessarily need to, go eat a huge meal because it's kind of in between those times of like you just had breakfast, but it's also kind of too early for lunch. So having like quick little smaller meals throughout the day kind of helps kind of curb your appetite a little bit and kind of helps maintain kind of your energy level. And that way you're not, picking out in certain sections and then being drowsy or sluggish later on down the road, especially on game days.
How close were your buildings to the food? Like either games, so say Rio, as opposed to say Tokyo, in proximity to the dining hall.
I would say Rio was about. Let me see if I can remember. I would say walk push about. I will say like 6-7 minutes, and then Tokyo walk push probably close to the same, maybe a minute or two more. Because our building was all the way down the way. It's a straight shot, but it's a little bit further down the road from it.
It's very easy to motivate people to eat, and obviously you and I know this. It's generally the I'll call them developing countries as opposed to third world countries because that's quite offensive. Would go to McDonald's, and people will find this very strange. They go to McDonald's to have a salad, and obviously the salad bars were readily. I don't know about Tokyo, but be it London and Beijing that I went to, you could get salad anywhere. Why do you necessarily have to go to McDonald's because it's free?
That is a great question. I know in Rio we have McDonald's all the time, because being American, we pretty much went like every day, maybe even twice a day. But it's usually not to like order like a huge amount of food. It's just certain things. Like I love breakfast food, so like I always go get like a quick egg muffin or something. Or some of the other guys will like a few chicken nuggets, type of thing. But we normally don't like pig out. Or I got smoothies from there quite a bit because they did smoothies as well, doing Rio. So I think things like that. Also, like you said, some of the other countries who doesn't have those places readily available, they might as well take advantage of the time, even if they are getting something that's at the cafeteria. They can still say, they went to McDonald's every day or that many times while they're there. So
it's a different perspective on it. But I would obviously say that for you, that might be home comfort in terms of what I'm able to, as close as I'm aware, replicate something that is okay. I know you're away from home at the moment, but I'm able to have something that will be probably a staple of most American diets. It'd be, if it's not McDonald's, it'd be one of the other chains.
Exactly.
So that being said, and this brings up an amazing story that I have.
Okay.
McDonald's has been the downfall of GB basketball years and years ago.
Oh, really?
A number of them. This is back in China. They got food poisoning from the ice. Wow. So it knocked. Okay. I don't know how many it knocked out of the team. It only affected them in the prelims, so it's not that big a deal. But I don't know how many people it affected in Paralympics GB after. So you were kind of advised.
Yeah,
the staff could have I think it was one of the what does McDonald's call it? Iced coffees.
Okay, yeah.
It was the ice that was a problem. There was nothing wrong with actual McDonald's, it said. But you would kind of go, well, you got to stay clear of it until you stop competing. And then if you want to be having toilet issues after the fact, it's not a big deal to the overall team because it's not going to affect your performance. Yeah. But obviously that for them, I had the fortune to see both the bronze medal game and the gold medal match from a spectator perspective. So that was, I've played at domestic level, but I've also seen the best up close and as close as I've got. And I've known Terry Bywater for years as a result of jumping on the team bus. God, it's a long time ago. 14 years ago? It's nearly 15 years ago. but they can joke around with people and say, "Oh, I think they got beaten by the Australians in the semi-final." So I happen to be with some Australians athletes, and it's like, no, James, you can get on the bus, but they can't. But they were obviously joking. It's like, well, we can't stop coming back to the village if you have no other means of knowing how to get back to the village, because you've come on team transport anyway. Be it was a spectator bus as opposed to your guys' one. But I thought I'd throw that in to kind of give you and the audience listening, obviously those are things that could go wrong in that you don't ever I don't think you'd ever prepare for a drink to sabotage your games.
No, you can never really,
and especially if you were an individual sport, that's catastrophic.
If you
were in a team sport, you hope it's not maybe more than 2-3. I think it affected the lineup for sure, but I don't think they would have said it would have any bearing on the outcome of the match. I'd have probably liked the bronze medal match to have been a bit close. I think the GB won it by 20 points in the end, and obviously your guys' contests after that have been a lot closer than that. I've been a couple points here or there.
Yeah.
So what does the future hold for you then, Brian, in terms of what is the next step? Because obviously you've got a very large family now. Family is very you can see that from social media, very important to you. What do you see possible? Because from international perspective, the only thing missing is world champs, because you've won your continental championship, you've won the Paralympics. Is that the only thing that's missing, or you just want to be able to have a legacy of continuing on that triumph, that triumphant how would I describe it? That triumph, because you've got an unblemished Paralympic record. Not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people's like, so are you gonna be done now? It's like, well, I'm fairly young still, and unfortunately, we don't have the strongest kind of talent pool coming up right now. So I feel like I need to stay around as long as I am needed, I would say. Even if these next couple of years it might be kind of a struggle, kind of rebuilding period a little bit, but still I'm gonna stick around, do my as best as I can, especially with some of the guys that stayed around after Tokyo, for them, some of the younger guys, and then just try to teach the next generation up a little bit more, so they're more prepared down the road once they get older and more into their careers. But yeah, right now, I'm like more thinking, long terms. Like you said, I have a bigger family now, so I'm more looking towards thinking about heading back to the States, and this potentially being my last year, to kind of, because at some point you have to figure out when is the best time to head back over, establish, an actual place for your kids and family so they can go to school, so they can have friends. You don't want to uproot them when they're, later in school, and then they have to basically kind of do it all over again back in the States. So I feel like it's a good time now to go back when they're a little bit younger. They haven't really started school or into school that much. My eldest two. So just thinking about that now. Trying to, because I just finished getting my MBA, so trying to figure out finding work, getting more work experience so I can find a better job down the road, those type of things. So more adulting things, unfortunately, that I have to start thinking about rather than, just basketball all the time.
Do you think it's a challenge then to go back to be selfish to a certain extent from a basketball perspective? Because there's always been talk of a professional league in the US, but it's never actually materialized.
Yeah, I would love for it to. I'd definitely be one of the first ones to sign up, but I just it's just so hard to kind of have the right people to like go out and get the right sponsors, I would say. And we also have way too many competing sports in the US to compete with compared to like over here in Europe. Like wheelchair basketball is like the fourth, maybe fifth, sport in Germany, I would say. It's pretty high up there in terms of, being a professional sport. Of course, that's there. There's football, and then maybe I don't know, handball next, and then maybe professional able-bodied basketball, and then maybe us type of thing. But in the U.S., it's like 20 different other sports that's way ahead of us in terms of priority. So it's just kind of an uphill battle. It's definitely getting better in terms of having people realize our sport is something to kind of invest in. But I don't see it happening, in the near future. Maybe, hopefully, maybe 5 years from now. But if we have the right people backing us, having the right people to kind of go out and kind of spread the word of our sport, then maybe it'll happen soon. But I just don't see it happening right now or in a couple of years from now. So love for it, but no.
You mentioned a good thing, and I saw on your Instagram of your jersey with Toyota on it. What does their you can't fault them as a company in terms of worldwide of endorsement of Paralympic sport. What does it bring to have? I'm assuming it's Toyota USA. That's obviously back in the national team. What does it bring to have that sort of pizzazz of a multinational company to back your program?
It definitely helps tremendously. And kind of like you touched on, they kind of been a kind of a big part in the movement of Paralympic sports. They've been having different athletes in different types of sports. They've been sponsoring. They definitely had one of our players, Steve, that they sponsored. So they're definitely trying to get more Paralympic athletes to kind of showcase their sports and have the world, get to know their sports as well. So that helps tremendously for sure because Toyota is such a big company and all the other companies, will see that Toyota sees some type of, good investment into it. So maybe I should do it as well. So it's definitely a good place and a good stepping in the right place on the right um, direction to help us to get more sponsors to maybe potentially get another league that's a little bit more professional than the ones we had previous with like D1 and stuff. So I'm definitely hoping that it works out, but yeah, it takes a lot of moving pieces that we don't necessarily have a lot right now.
So if we rewind back slightly and we talk about Tokyo again, what was it like to finally have the same jersey as Team USA basketball?
That was really really amazing. I would say a lot of us were so amazed that we were able to get it. We were so hyped for it. It was just kind of extra motivation to be able to wear the same jersey as the able-bodied for sure. And it's the biggest thing like for years now. Even like before Rio, we were just wondering why we haven't been under the same umbrella as USA Basketball when we are USA Basketball. And that's more of I don't really know the exact details, but this is previous ownership of our governing body, having issues with USA Basketball, like maybe some of the things that like they're requesting or asking of, the NWA. I don't know. I don't know the full extent of it. I know we are now working to kind of rebuild those bridges that were maybe potentially burnt back then. So it's definitely looking good for in the future in terms of being able to be underneath the same umbrella as USA Basketball with the able-bodied team for sure.
Would you ever like to see your jersey on sale then, as in nationwide then? Because ultimately you've done exactly as your able-bodied counterparts in Tokyo of winning gold. Ultimately, theirs is pretty much okay. The women's almost guaranteed. The men,
pretty
even though I
close.
don't,
Yeah,
pretty close.
kind of
Even though I don't
sometimes.
sound American, obviously I am. I've got
Yeah.
that luxury, but I was a little bit skeptical when they lost to the French. It's like,
Yeah, I
okay,
was little.
maybe because we're
Yeah.
going down to. It's no discredit to the individuals that were there. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
it's not
No.
the first caliber team that you would ideally would like to send to an Olympics. Thus, if you got LeBron, well, if you use probably the best probably team of late was probably the one in the Beijing. Kobe.
Yeah. Yeah. That team.
It
Yeah.
was pretty much all star 1 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
The others are
Yeah.
the other teams are going to have an amazing game to win. Okay, the Spanish managed to do it, but they still come up second best. But obviously, for when we talk about wheelchair basketball, pretty much 1 to 5 on any given day could win a tournament. Or would you say less?
It just depends, but there's a good chance. Yes, I would say maybe. Yeah, maybe maybe 3 out of 5, maybe.
Because I didn't see you guys losing to GB in the pool stages based on what happened to having a head coach.
Yeah.
Guys having to step up into the role of being coach. Obviously, that's created political debate over here to kind of go, well, if he's having to make all the decisions, can he then play? And then does it make it more difficult from a tactical position, which as a player is probably very difficult because you've probably got to put your ego to aside to be able to make the right decisions for the betterment of the team. So for them to beat you guys in the way that they did, I was very surprised when obviously lost to the Germans. So there was results coming. I was like, well, I didn't expect that. And then obviously the progression that you guys made through the pool, I was like, well, okay.
Yeah.
There is a chance for the Japanese to have the fairy tale thing happen and they win the whole thing. Okay, that would probably be for the how would I describe it? If you were like to make a Disney story, that would end up who would win. It's like, okay, they've come never medaled before to win the whole thing in their back door. It's pretty much what you like to see of anybody that gets the opportunity to compete on home soil. They rise to the occasion. Obviously, for the majority of people, it crushes them because it's like, well, I'm in the media spotlight and I don't like this. Thus, I only can think of one athlete. It happened to one of the Brazilian sprinters that beat Oscar Pistorius, and then he got massively overweight and then didn't perform in Rio. But for the majority, most people would massively embrace the bipartisan crowd they're going to get. And thus, they're going to use that to go forward. So, for you guys to win it in spite of your setback, it was the goal, that was the mission of bringing home the gold, and obviously you delivered.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging, especially it being postponed a year. Most people were already planning their lives after that, so they basically have to postpone the part of their life a year later, so they can still compete in it. And then just going into it, we didn't get together as much because we had to make sure people got vaccinated, this and that, make sure people were doing the right steps. So it was definitely, but it was that way for all the teams. So we can't use that as an excuse because all of the teams have to do the same thing that we had to do in terms of getting people together, being safe, having all these extra rules in place, having many basically like bubbles, because you don't want your players being exposed to certain people outside of the sport leading up to Tokyo. So there's so many different factors that was in it. So that's what we thought. Like this time it wasn't like Rio wasn't guaranteed, but we knew that we were potentially one of the favorites to win it. but it wasn't guaranteed. We really had to, earn it and prove it. But this one, we know everyone was gunning for us, because we won previous. Everyone's going to catch up and be able to, play at the same level the whole time with us, no matter what. And it showed. Like it was a bunch of close games during the Tokyo run. We had a close game against, GB, of course, and lost. Had a close game against Germany to start off. We had a fairly close game a little bit against Turkey. So it's a lot of those teams that, were kind of improved from the last thing and caught up. And it was close. The same thing. Japan, was the same boat. They've known to lose, big games, and then they performed. They were able to beat a very strong GB to get into the final. So you just when stuff like this happens, like it kind of evens the playing field. You kind of almost because everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone has to follow the same rules. There's no extra stuff that they can do to kind of help to prepare. Like they all have to quarantine. They all have to do mini bubbles. They all have to do this the same. So it was definitely interesting. Definitely frustrating, especially being in a little bubble in Tokyo. But definitely well worth it in terms of keeping everyone safe, in terms of Tokyo's overall operation. There wasn't as many, positive cases compared to like the Olympics. So that was excellent news and excellent job on that part for sure. And then also to be able to come on top, like you mentioned, in the end, through everything's going on.
So would you not like to hang on until LA then?
Oh man, just thinking about that makes me feel old. Um, yeah, I don't know. I potentially might since it is in the in the backyard, it's just right there. But I don't know.
It's
But 'I'll just have to
7 years.
wait and
Oh no,
see.
no, it's
Yeah,
less than that now, isn't it? It's six
like
years.
six and a half or six and a quarter. Yeah, but I will just have to wait and see. I will hope that there's some up and coming players that will take my spot, by force, and then being able to kind of spur on the next generation. But if they need me to stay, I already told them that I'll do as much as I am needed to do in terms of staying with the team and contributing.
So Paris is very much on the cards then.
Paris is definitely for sure right now. Yes. LA it's still up in the air. Most likely not, but it's still up in the air. But
So,
Paris
so
is definitely a go.
so if I had to press you, Brian, for
Mm,
LA, heart of hearts, this is
mm,
this is heart over head now.
okay.
Would you rather be competing or spectating?
That is a great question. I can watch basketball and then cheer and heckle people while drinking a beer or something. That'd be amazing. Um, but I'll still probably prefer to play if I am capable of playing at still at a high level. Then I will still probably prefer to play. It's just nothing like being a part of the games and experiencing that. Um, but again, it would be pretty easy and convenient to just kind of come and spectate a few games and then easy, 2 3 hour flight back home to wherever I am later on. But again, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out down the road. Make sure that my health down the road is still good. My body is still functioning the way it needs to be. Because age kind of catches up with you. You never know what's going to happen down the road in terms of accidents or fall down and break something. So basically, just hoping that I have good health, and if it all goes according to plan, then maybe I'll be in LA. So
Have you tempted fate there with injuries and things like that? Obviously, touch wood,
I
that doesn't
know.
happen. Has there any been other than the amputation,
Mhm.
any injuries that's not that has kind of held you out of the game for a prolonged period of time?
Actually, no, I haven't really had any injuries. That's kind of my knack is being able to have high levels of energy and then not really getting injured hardly ever. It's kind of basically my trademark, I would say, for many years but yeah, I haven't really had any issues. I know in college, like I hit my elbow on someone else's chair and just got like basically a cut. So I had to get stitches, but I didn't miss any games from it. Like I was able to play maybe 2 days later in practice type of thing. So it wasn't that big of an issue. But yeah, I try to play as much as I can. I rarely even miss practice. You can probably ask anyone how many times does Brian Asher miss practice or miss camps? It's probably hardly ever. I just try to, as much as possible, maintain my body at a high level, even with, age creeping in more and more and more. Just understanding, oh, maybe I'm not as young as I need to be. Maybe I need to ice a little bit more. Maybe I need to stretch that extra 5-10 minutes more than I normally would a couple years ago. So just understanding my body as I progress, later and later in my career will help. I don't know if I'm trying to pull like a LeBron. I'm not trying to be at a high level for 19 seasons. I'm not doing that, but I'm trying to maintain, a good enough um, aspect of nutrition and body prep and stuff as long as I play.
When you mentioned practice, I immediately thought of Allen Iverson's comment.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Other than that, was obviously more serious than practice itself. When he lost somebody that was close to him. When you think of that, obviously, practice is no big deal in terms of somebody's life. And then game, I'd probably give him a bit of a break because he was the 76ers franchise for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time. Yeah.
So that being said, Brian, what was it like for you to have a little break then in your season? Because obviously the Europeans were postponed a year. What was it like to have a little bit of impromptu break in your domestic season?
It wasn't too bad. I didn't 100% like it because we also didn't have anything with USA basketball either. And we normally have like a training camp or even like a tryout or something in January, and we didn't even have that. So it's basically it's like no motivation to do anything, which I really don't like. I like kind of looking forward to like things like tryouts or a game. But like the past couple of years, we had a game up until I think like December 20th or 22nd or something, and then we had tryouts in January like 1st. So it was just such a small window. Like I had to constantly train. Like here, I just felt this break. There was just so much time and break that it's good, but I didn't like it as much. I wanted to still train. I wanted to still compete. So it was definitely hard at the beginning to kind of self-motivate when I know there's nothing coming up for like a month and a half type of thing. But so I did give myself a break, like the first week, maybe a week or so in the break. And then after that, then I got back into kind of the normal swing of things, going to training, going to lifting 3 times a week at least, stuff like that. But yeah, I don't like breaks. I prefer if I can train at least 3 to 4 times a week. I do that rather than not doing anything at all. So
do you have a hard time to give yourself that space, and does it have to be kind of mandated it down as you need to take we're telling you as an organization, take some time off?
I definitely from coach here, definitely from, even my wife is like, you should take some time off. You do basketball 24/7, like the whole year round. Like you should take some time off. Yeah, I don't want to. But, ultimately they are right. You definitely need to take more breaks to more kind of refocus and use most of the time. I kind of use training for my national team as kind of a break because it's, different sets of people, different sets of players with different, tendencies compared to your team over here in Germany. So I kind of consider that as a break almost because I'm kind of refocusing the way I think in terms of how I perform with my national team compared to with my club team. So to completely like focus and not do anything or do less was definitely challenging. But I did try my best to not do as much especially like I said early on. And it was definitely a nice break. I was able to hang out with family more. I was able to do stuff with them more, which I haven't been able to do as much because I'm so busy training and doing things like that in terms of getting ready to compete. So it was definitely nice, and it was a good break for sure. And I did appreciate taking it, and having people encourage me to take it.
I appreciate you sharing that insight to obviously the athlete mindset in terms of it's not always as people would expect.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we're coming to the end of the show, and I'm gonna do the last two questions I like to ask all my guests. So the first one for you, Brian, is if you got to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive for that matter, who would that be and why?
Well, for the longest, I've been asked this question a lot. So previously, it's been Kobe, especially now because he's passed now. Just to kind of how much he's changed the game, after Michael Jordan, kind of the mentality he put into basically the sport of basketball, how much work he put into his craft, kind of extra inspired me, especially when I was growing up and watching him play and practice and do all this stuff to kind of put, extra effort into my craft to kind of take that next step, and be able to make a national team, to be able to, be able to compete against some of the best players in the world, and compete with them and not be, second fiddle, not be kind of trailing behind them, actually be either beating them or competing with them. So it was definitely, I would say, Kobe for sure, and his Mamba mentality for sure be the person I would like to talk to.
And the final question before we sign off, if you had to summarize what we've been speaking about into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
I would say the summary would be, no matter where you start in life, if you want to go into a sport, you find something that you are passionate about, and you want to 100% give complete effort to it, you can make it to the highest stage no matter what. So looking back, I was just a kid with very high goals, high achievements, not really thinking that it's going to come up much, but still had them. And now, two-time gold medalist, have won countless high achievements over in Europe at a professional level. Have a bachelor's degree, master's degree, loving family. So even though those traumatic things in life happens, you can still bring very good and positive things from those things, and you can live your life. You can play a sport you love. You can do anything you want in life. And that's my take from our conversation.
So once again, Brian, thanks again for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and got loads from it. Anything that was included and discussed will be available in the show notes below. And I would love to hear from you. Come and connect and ask your questions. I've been James Roberts from jamesowenroberts.com. Remember this quote by Chris Harth: an athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think, and execute, not by some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete.